Have you ever witnessed blatant racism escalate to physical violence right before your eyes? Imagine being Dr. Evelyn Reed, a respected black professor, simply asking for a minor seat adjustment due to back pain on a flight. Instead of assistance, she faced dismissive hostility from a white flight attendant, who sneered, "Maybe you people always have some kind of issue." This shocking prejudice culminated in the attendant slapping Dr. Reed across the face in front of stunned passengers. Unbelievable. It happened. Find out the full story, the fallout, and the fight for justice. Don't forget to hit subscribe, ring the bell, and leave your thoughts in the comments below. The hum of the Boeing 777 was a familiar white noise, a sound Dr. Evelyn Reed usually found soothing, a prelude to the quiet contemplation or focused work that long flights afforded. Today, however, the low thrum did little to ease the persistent ache radiating from her lower back, a souvenir from a recent fender bender. She shifted uncomfortably in seat 24B, the stiff fabric unforgiving against her lumbar spine. Evelyn, a tenured professor of sociology at a prestigious East Coast university, was on her way to a major conference in San Diego, eager to present her latest research on intersectionality and workplace dynamics. She was dressed smartly but comfortably for the cross-country journey, tailored slacks, a silk blouse and flats. Her locks were neatly pinned up, and her glasses rested on her nose as she tried to find a position that didn't send jolts of pain up her spine. Minutes ticked by as passengers settled, the usual choreography of stowing carry-ons and finding seats playing out. The flight attendants moved through the cabin with practiced efficiency. As the plane began its slow taxi towards the runway, Evelyn realized the slight recline wasn't enough. The pain was becoming insistent, distracting. She needed a bit more of an angle, just a fraction to alleviate the pressure. Looking down the aisle, she saw a flight attendant approaching, a white woman perhaps in her late 30s or early 40s, with blonde hair pulled back tightly and a name tag that read Karen. Her smile seemed professionally applied, a standard feature of the uniform. Evelyn waited until Karen was closer and caught her eye. "Excuse me," she said, her voice calm and polite, mindful of the surrounding passengers. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I'm having some significant back pain from a recent injury. Would it be possible to adjust this seat just a little further back? Even a small change would help immensely." Karen Miller paused, her professional smile flickering for a microsecond. "Ma'am, the seats are designed for standard comfort during takeoff and landing," she replied, her tone neutral but lacking warmth. "We ask that all seats remain in the upright position until we reach cruising altitude." "I understand that," Evelyn said, keeping her voice even. "I wouldn't ask if it wasn't quite painful. It's not about general comfort. It's a specific medical issue. Just a slight adjustment if possible." She tried to convey the genuine discomfort she was feeling. Karen looked down at Evelyn, her gaze lingering perhaps a moment too long. Something shifted in her demeanor. The practiced neutrality hardened into something cooler, dismissive. "Look, everyone finds these seats a bit uncomfortable," she said, her voice taking on a slight edge, loud enough for the passengers in the adjacent rows to hear. "You'll just have to manage like everyone else. We can't make special exceptions." The implication hung in the air that Evelyn was exaggerating, seeking special treatment. It was a familiar microaggression, the subtle questioning of her reality, her pain. Evelyn felt a familiar knot tighten in her stomach, the one that always formed when politeness was met with unwarranted suspicion. "I assure you, it's not about being uncomfortable," Evelyn reiterated, trying to keep frustration out of her tone. "It's a diagnosed back injury. A small adjustment is all I'm requesting." Karen crossed her arms, her stance becoming more confrontational. "The rules are the rules. You should have considered your condition before booking a standard economy seat. Perhaps you should have arranged for different accommodations if you require special treatment." The phrase, "special treatment," dripped with condescension. The coded language wasn't lost on Evelyn. The suggestion that she, a black woman, was being demanding, trying to get something she wasn't entitled to. "I'm not asking for first class," Evelyn said, her voice firm but still controlled. She was acutely aware of the nearby passengers, some now openly watching. "I'm asking for a minor adjustment permitted by the seat mechanism, due to pain. It's a reasonable request." Karen leaned in slightly, lowering her voice to a harsh whisper, yet ensuring it carried, "Maybe you people always have some kind of issue. Just sit back and be quiet. We're about to take off." "You people." The words struck Evelyn like ice water. The mask of professional civility had slipped entirely, revealing the ugliness beneath. It wasn't just about the seat anymore. It was about her race. She felt a surge of anger, hot and sharp. But years of navigating predominantly white spaces had taught her the perilous tightrope black women walk. Show anger, and you're the angry black woman. Raise your voice, and you're aggressive. She took a slow, deliberate breath, forcing herself to remain outwardly calm, even as her heart pounded. That comment was completely inappropriate and unprofessional, Evelyn stated, her voice low but unwavering. I need you to adjust the seat, or I need to speak to your supervisor or the captain immediately. It was the calm assertion of her rights, the refusal to be intimidated, that seemed to enrage Karen further. Her face flushed red, her eyes, cold moments before, now blazed with fury. How dare you speak to me like that, she hissed. And then, the unthinkable happened. In a swift, shocking motion, Karen Miller raised her hand and slapped Dr. Evelyn Reed across the face. The sound cracked through the cabin's low hum. It wasn't a gentle tap. It was a hard, stinging slap that snapped Evelyn's head to the side. Gasps rippled through the nearby rows. Time seemed to freeze. Passengers stared, mouths agape, eyes wide with disbelief. A woman in the row ahead turned completely around, her hand covering her mouth. Someone fumbled with their phone, the red light of a recording discreetly aimed towards the aisle. Evelyn slowly raised a hand to her cheek, the skin burning where Karen's hand had struck. The shock was profound, momentarily overriding the pain. It wasn't just the physical violation, it was the utter degradation, the blatant display of racial animosity culminating in violence, performed in front of dozens of strangers. She felt stripped bare, humiliated, yet a core of steel formed within her. She slowly pushed herself up from her seat, standing to face Karen, her gaze direct and piercing despite the tears welling in her eyes. There was a beat of stunned silence. Karen seemed momentarily shocked by her own action, her hand still slightly raised, her breathing ragged. But then, a flicker of defiance, perhaps even justification, crossed her face. Evelyn did not shout. She did not retaliate. Her voice, when she spoke, was shaking slightly, but held an undeniable authority forged in that moment of violation. I want to speak to the captain now, Karen scoffed, attempting to regain control, though her hand trembled. This is ridiculous. It was a misunderstanding. Just sit down. She tried to wave dismissively, as if swatting away an annoying fly, not acknowledging the assault she had just committed. You assaulted me, Evelyn stated, the words clear and precise. Get the captain. The surrounding passengers were murmuring now, a low buzz of shock and outrage. Did you see that? Someone whispered. She just slapped her. Another passenger, a young white man seated across the aisle, spoke up tentatively. Hey, that wasn't right. You can't just hit someone. Karen shot him a venomous look, but seemed to realize the situation was escalating beyond her control. The eyes of the cabin were on her, judging her. Evelyn remained standing, a pillar of wounded dignity, refusing to back down. She turned and began walking calmly but purposefully towards the front of the plane, towards the cockpit. Karen watched her go, her face a mixture of disbelief and dawning panic. The tension in the cabin was thick enough to cut with a knife. Passengers exchanged nervous glances, whispering theories. Was the flight attendant unstable? Was the passenger exaggerating? But the slap, the undeniable sound and sight of it, had been witnessed. Evelyn reached the cockpit door and knocked firmly. After a moment it opened, and a man in his 50s, Captain Davidson, appeared. He had the serious, focused look of a veteran pilot. What's going on here? He asked, his eyes scanning Evelyn's face, perhaps noticing the red mark beginning to bloom on her cheek. Captain, Evelyn began, her voice steady despite the internal tremor. I need to report a serious incident. Your flight attendant, Karen Miller, refused a reasonable request to adjust my seat due to back pain, made racially inappropriate remarks, and then physically assaulted me. She slapped me across the face in front of numerous passengers. She recounted the events calmly, factually, refusing to let emotion overwhelm her account. Captain Davidson listened intently, his expression growing graver with each word. He didn't interrupt. When she finished, there was a moment of silence. He looked past Evelyn down the aisle, perhaps seeing the tense faces of the passengers, the other flight attendants frozen in place. Stay right here, ma'am, he he said quietly but firmly. He stepped out of the cockpit and walked briskly down the aisle towards where Karen Miller stood, looking increasingly flustered. The minutes stretched into an eternity for Evelyn, standing near the galley. She could feel the weight of the passengers' stares, hear the hushed speculation. What would happen? Would Karen face consequences? Would the airline try to sweep this under the rug? The humiliation burned, but so did a growing sense of resolve. This wasn't just about a slap. It was about the casual dehumanization she had endured, rooted in the color of her skin. Captain Davidson reached Karen. Their exchange was brief and low, but his body language was unmistakable, authoritative, non-negotiable. Karen's face paled, then flushed with anger and embarrassment. The captain gestured firmly towards the front galley. He then turned and walked back towards Evelyn, his face set. "Dr. Reed," he said, addressing her formally, acknowledging the information she must have shared. "I am appalled by what you've described, and what appears to have been witnessed. This behavior is unacceptable, and will not be tolerated on my aircraft or by this airline. Please accept my sincerest apologies. We will handle this immediately." He then spoke into his radio briefly before turning back to Karen, who had followed him hesitantly towards the front. "Karen, gather your belongings. You will be deplaning here. Airport security will meet us at the gate." His voice was final. Karen sputtered. "But Captain, she provoked me. She was being difficult, demanding." "I heard Dr. Reed's account, and I've seen enough," the captain cut her off sharply. "Your behavior was inexcusable. End of discussion. You are relieved of your duties for this flight, effective immediately." The finality of his words stunned Karen into silence. Her face crumpled, a mask of disbelief and self-pity replacing the earlier anger. Escorted by another senior flight attendant, she was led off the plane just as the gate agent reconnected the jet bridge. Her departure watched by the silent, astonished cabin. Captain Davidson returned to the front and picked up the intercom microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," his voice resonated through the cabin, steady but stern. "We apologize for the slight delay. Due to an unforeseen personnel issue, we've had a change in our cabin crew. We are arranging for a replacement flight attendant to join us shortly. We appreciate your patience and understanding as we ensure the safety and professionalism of your flight experience. We expect to be underway again momentarily." He made no direct mention of the assault, but everyone knew what the personnel issue was. Evelyn slowly made her way back to her seat, her legs feeling weak. Passengers looked at her with a mixture of sympathy, curiosity, and perhaps even discomfort. A middle-aged black woman across the aisle met her eyes and gave a small supportive nod. It was a silent acknowledgement, a shared understanding of the undercurrents Evelyn had just navigated. She sank into her seat, the adrenaline starting to fade, leaving behind a profound exhaustion and the lingering sting on her cheek and in her soul. The journey was far from over, and she had a sickening feeling that the turbulence had only just begun. As the plane finally ascended, reaching cruising altitude, the hum of the engines seemed louder, filling the heavy silence left by the confrontation. A new flight attendant, younger, with a visibly concerned and apologetic demeanor, moved through the cabin, offering drinks and snacks, trying to smooth over the jagged edges of the incident. But the atmosphere remained thick with unspoken tension. Evelyn stared out the window at the clouds below, replaying the scene. "You people." The words echoed, a stark reminder that her education, her professional status, her calm demeanor, none of it mattered when confronted with raw prejudice. The slap was the physical manifestation of that prejudice, an assertion of power meant to put her back in her perceived place. Her phone buzzed. Hesitantly, she pulled it out. A text from a colleague who was also attending the conference. "Evelyn, are you okay? Just saw a video. Something happened on your flight." Her heart sank. She knew instantly. The passenger with the phone. She quickly opened a browser, her fingers trembling slightly. It didn't take long to find it. Multiple uploads already. Titles like "Racist Flight Attendant Slaps Black Professor" or "Airline Incident, Passenger Assaulted Over Seat." The thumbnail showed a blurry image of her, hand to her cheek, Karen's furious face close by. She clicked on one link. The video was short, shaky, but brutally clear. It captured Karen's aggressive posture, the sound of her hateful words, "You people always have some kind of issue," followed immediately by the sharp crack of the slap and the collective gasp. Then it cut off. The comments section was already exploding, a firestorm of outrage, defense and vile racism. OMG. Fire her immediately. That professor handled it with such grace. Typical Karen. White entitlement on full display. There's always two sides. What did the professor do to provoke her? She probably played the race card. This is why BLM exists. Disgusting. She barely tapped her. People are so sensitive these days. That flight attendant needs jail time and anger management. All lives matter. Why make it about race? Evelyn felt sick. Her private humiliation, her violation, was now public spectacle, dissected and debated by thousands of strangers. The racist tropes she faced daily, in subtle forms, were now being hurled openly in the comments. Her identity was reduced to black professor, her pain a subject for online debate. News outlets were picking it up with alarming speed. Alerts popped up on her phone. CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, local affiliates. The story was spreading like wildfire. Caught on camera, flight attendant's racist attack mid-flight. Professor assaulted by airline staff. Incident sparks outrage. Her name, Dr. Evelyn Reed, was suddenly linked to this ugly event. The replacement flight attendant approached her cautiously. "Dr. Reed, the captain asked me to check on you. Can I get you anything? Water? Aspirin?" Her voice was gentle, her eyes full of sympathy. "Thank you." Evelyn managed a weak smile. "Just some water, please." As the flight attendant hurried away, the black woman across the aisle leaned over slightly. "Sister, you held yourself with incredible strength," she whispered. "Don't let them diminish what happened. That was pure hate." Evelyn nodded, grateful for the solidarity. "Thank you," she whispered back. "It's exhausting." She spent the rest of the flight in a daze, the online storm raging on her phone while the cabin remained outwardly calm, though the undercurrents were undeniable. She felt exposed, vulnerable, yet a new feeling was emerging alongside the pain and anger. Responsibility. This wasn't just her story anymore. It was a stark example of the everyday racism black people endure, often silently. Maybe, just maybe, she had a chance to ensure this incident wasn't just another fleeting viral moment. When the plane finally landed in San Diego, the announcement came for passengers to remain seated. Airport security and airline representatives boarded the plane. A woman in a sharp suit, introducing herself as a senior customer relations manager, approached Evelyn's seat, flanked by two security officers. "Dr. Reed," the manager began, her voice oozing practiced concern. "On behalf of the airline, I want to offer our most profound apologies for the utterly unacceptable experience you endured today. We have launched a full investigation. Miller has been suspended pending the outcome, but I assure you, her employment is effectively terminated. This behavior has no place in our company." She continued outlining offers of compensation, flight vouchers, upgraded hotel accommodations. "We've arranged a private lounge for you to decompress and provide a formal statement when you feel ready. We also have members of our legal team available should you wish to discuss further steps." Evelyn listened, numbly. The corporate response felt swift but hollow. An apology couldn't erase the sting of the slap or the venom in Karen's words. The mention of lawyers felt double-edged, support or damage control. "I need some time," Evelyn said quietly. "I need to gather my thoughts." They escorted her off the plane, away from the curious stares of other passengers, through a private corridor to a sterile airport lounge. Alone, she sank into a chair, the silence amplifying the chaos in her mind. Her phone continued to buzz relentlessly. Messages poured in from colleagues, friends, family, even strangers. Support, outrage, advice. She scrolled through the news articles. Her photo, often a professional headshot pulled from her university website, was plastered everywhere alongside the blurry video still. The narrative was being shaped, debated. Was she a victim? An instigator? A symbol? A soft knock. A young man entered, identifying himself as a reporter from a major news network. "Dr. Reed, I know this is an incredibly difficult time, but would you be willing to share your side of the story? People need to hear what happened from you." Evelyn hesitated. Part of her wanted to disappear, to retreat into the anonymity she cherished. But looking at the reporter, thinking of the comments section, the dismissive attitudes, the insidious nature of the racism she experienced, she knew silence wasn't an option. This was bigger than her discomfort. It was about challenging the systems and attitudes that allowed such an incident to occur. It was about you people. She took a deep breath, the sociologist in her analyzing the situation even as the human being in her reeled. "Okay," she said, her voice finding a surprising steadiness. "Let's talk." The reporter signaled his camera crew. The lights flickered on. Evelyn sat straighter, composing herself. The interview began, and she started to tell her story, not just about the slap, but about the casual cruelty, the coded language, the assumption of wrongdoing simply because of her race. "This wasn't just about a flight attendant having a bad day," Evelyn explained, choosing her words carefully, the academic precision merging with raw emotion. "It was about a pattern of disrespect and dehumanization that black people, particularly black women, face regularly. The request was simple, polite. The response was immediately dismissive, escalating to hostility and then violence. The comment, 'you people,' that laid bare the prejudice driving her actions. It wasn't just an assault. It felt like a racially motivated assault." The reporter listened intently. How did it feel, being targeted like that in such a public space? "Humiliating," Evelyn admitted, her voice thick with emotion. "Violating. There's a specific kind of vulnerability you feel when subjected to racism, the knowledge that your degrees, your accomplishments, your adherence to social norms, none of it protects you." In that moment, I was reduced to a stereotype in her eyes. Someone undeserving of basic courtesy, let alone empathy. And the slap, it was meant to silence me, to put me in my place. She spoke about the burden of maintaining composure, the fear of being labeled angry if she reacted naturally to provocation. We learned to swallow our anger, to modulate our tone, to present ourselves as non-threatening, even when we are the ones being threatened. It's an exhausting performance. The interview continued, delving into the airline's response, the viral nature of the video, and what she hoped would come from this ordeal. "I appreciate the airline's swift action in removing her from the flight," Evelyn said. "But this isn't just about one employee. It's about corporate culture, training, accountability. How are they actively combating racial bias within their workforce? Apologies and vouchers are insufficient if the underlying issues aren't addressed." "What do you want people to take away from your experience?" the reporter asked. Evelyn paused, gathering her thoughts. "I want people to understand that racism isn't always loud or overt. It thrives in microaggressions, in dismissive tones, in the assumption of bad intent. It's in the you people. I want people to listen to black voices, to believe our experiences, and I want accountability, not just for the individual, but for the systems that allow prejudice to fester. This shouldn't happen to anyone." As the camera crew packed up, Evelyn felt drained but strangely empowered. She had spoken her truth, framed the narrative not just as an assault victim, but as a black woman challenging systemic bias. The media storm wouldn't abate, but she had added her voice, clear and strong, to the discourse. The conference organizers reached out later that day, expressing deep regret and unwavering support. They reiterated their offer. Would she consider sharing her experience during the conference, perhaps during the plenary session on social justice? Initially, the thought was overwhelming, standing before hundreds of peers, laying bare her vulnerability. But then she considered the platform, an audience of educators, researchers, activists, people dedicated to understanding and changing social structures. It was an opportunity she couldn't refuse. This wasn't just her story, it was a case study, a visceral example of the theories many in that room debated abstractly. She spent the next day preparing, not just recounting the event, but weaving it into a larger tapestry of racial injustice, implicit bias, and the need for active anti-racism. She drew on her own research, her lived experience, the messages of support she'd received, and even the hateful comments that revealed the depth of the problem. Standing at the podium 2 days later, Evelyn looked out at the packed auditorium. The room was silent, expectant. She took a breath and began. "Good morning. 2 days ago, I'd boarded a plane to join you at this conference, excited to share my research on workplace dynamics and intersectionality. I did not expect that my journey here would become a living example of the very issues I study." She told the story, sparing no detail. The request, the dismissal, the microaggressions, the chilling you people, the slap. The audience listened, rapt. Some gasped audibly at the description of the assault. Others shook their heads slowly, tears glistening in their eyes. "What happened on that flight?" she continued, her voice gaining strength. was not an isolated incident of one employee losing her temper. It was a manifestation of a pervasive societal ill, racism. It was the culmination of implicit biases allowed to fester, of white entitlement assuming the power to police black bodies and black voices, and of a system that often fails to protect us. She spoke about the emotional labor of navigating white spaces, the constant vigilance required. The expectation was that I remain calm, polite, even after being verbally abused and physically assaulted, because the stereotype of the angry black woman is always waiting in the wings, ready to discredit our legitimate pain and anger. She challenged the audience. How many of us in this room have witnessed microaggressions and stayed silent? How many institutions represented here today provide performative diversity statements, but lack substantive anti-racist training and accountability? That flight attendant felt empowered to act as she did. We must ask ourselves why. What in our culture, in our workplaces, in our society, gives rise to that sense of impunity? She didn't offer easy answers. Instead, she called for uncomfortable conversations, for rigorous self-examination, for concrete action. Respect is not enough. Tolerance is not enough. We need active anti-racism. We need to dismantle the structures that uphold white supremacy. We need to believe black people when we share our experiences. We need allies to move beyond silent sympathy and engage in active disruption of racist behavior when they see it. She spoke of the viral video, the mixed reactions, the way her trauma became public consumption. But even in the ugliness of the comments, she said, there was an outpouring of support, of shared stories, a reminder that I am not alone, that we are not alone in this fight. Her closing was powerful. I stand here today, not just as Dr. Evelyn Reed, sociologist, but as a black woman who was assaulted for asking for a seat adjustment. Let this incident not be just another fleeting headline. Let it be a catalyst. Let it fuel our commitment to creating a world where no one is told they are you people, where everyone's dignity is inviolable, where safety and respect are not privileges afforded only to some. The work is hard, it is long, but it is necessary. Let's do the work. The room erupted. Not just applause, but a standing ovation, resonant and sustained. People were crying, nodding, looking at each other with newfound determination. Evelyn stood at the podium, tears streaming down her face now, not from pain but from relief, from solidarity, from the fierce hope that maybe, just maybe, this moment could spark real change. In the months that followed, Evelyn became an unintentional but powerful advocate. She continued to speak, write and engage, pushing the airline for systemic changes beyond firing one employee. She collaborated with civil rights organizations. Her story, born of a moment of racist violence, became a touchstone in conversations about bias in the service industry and beyond. The fight was far from over, the work immense, but Dr. Evelyn Reed, initially just a professor traveling to a conference, had found a new, urgent dimension to her life's work. Dr. Reed's experience is a harsh, but vital reminder. Prejudice often hides behind ordinary interactions until it explodes. It teaches us the profound importance of seeing the full humanity in everyone we meet, regardless of their job or background. How we react in moments of frustration, especially towards those serving us, reveals our true character. Let's actively choose empathy, challenge bias when we see it, and uphold basic dignity in every encounter. What resonated most with you in this story? I genuinely want to know your perspective. Please share your thoughts down in the comments. Let's really talk about this. And if these kinds of stories matter to you, hitting that like button and subscribing helps us bring more of them to light. Thanks for being part of this community.